This is Jana, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be covering all sorts of topics because you're so multifaceted. And again, we met through our children actually almost 5 years ago, almost 10 years ago. Our eldest were together. It is a long time. And we've just had, I feel like our friendship just keeps growing and blooming. And I think it's in large part, because both of us just keep kind of growing and wanting to reach further levels of just self-awareness. Yeah. And it's been so beautiful. So you used to be a Microsoft exec 10 years ago, and then you left all that behind to be home with your children and create this new life for yourself. And I'm just so excited for you to share that with other people, because I don't know, you just you let it take you where it needs to go, and you don't sit there in this worry and anxiety of what will the future really look like. You just allow things to unfold, and you now have 3 children, right? And a 10-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So you've gone through a lot of different stages. So tell me a little bit about that. Why don't we start with, what does your daily life look like? Because your children are home with you.
So it is all encompassing. So it is, somebody described it to me like it is all enveloping at this moment, like the 975. It's that is my life, right? And so that's my main project, I call it, right? And I was saying this the other day because when I try to take a secondary project, like having this time with you, that it's my secondary project, that my primary project sometimes doesn't like me having secondary projects, and sometimes I get frustrated that, hey, I want a secondary project here, but I have to remember my primary project is this commitment to family. And I said, my 40s will be for my family. And that was kind of my decision to commit my 40s to my family. And so that's what I do. I wake up at 6 o'clock sometimes, and then I co-sleep. And so you don't get out of bed without a child knowing about it. So I know from the Waldorf perspective that it's this lovely idea to get up as the caregiver and have that time for myself and prepare myself to embrace the children as they awake. And I would love to do this. Co-sleeping does not allow for that reality. And it is chaotic, and there's a lot of moving parts, and they're just waking up, and I'm just waking up, and you kind of go with that flow. And it's been a major practice of inner work, of understanding that I set the pace. So if I wake up hurried and I gotta do this and this and this and this and this, because I have 3 dogs and 3 cats and 3 hamsters and the 2 fish tanks and the bunny and the
I forgot about all that.
There's a lot. There's feeding. There's feeding time at the zoo, we call it. We make fun when we say there's feeding time at the zoo. And the children usually like to get up and immediately get into their play, but I ask them to visit the bathroom and the bedroom first to get ready for the day, as we call it. So that's their to do. A lot of the time, imagination takes over, and they are on the trampoline at 6:15, and that happens sometimes. But they understand that there's chores that mommy and daddy have to do to get ready, and we want to wake up too, and that's okay, and that's our boundary, right?
Exactly. And I think it's so important you just touched on, having chores, because when children are homeschooled, and you'll get into even the unschooling version of your homeschooling. When they have a bit of structure, it's necessary to hold them in that place, because as much as children require probably more freedom than they get, typical settings, school and settings, but they definitely also thrive from that structure too.
The 9-year-old, because I came into childhood really wanting to do my best and to do everything perfectly. And I stumbled accidentally onto the building that is the Toronto Waldorf School because of the farmer's market. And I was so impressed with the architecture and how beautiful the space was. I started asking questions like, what is this building? What is this school? And then I took my foundations of Steiner. But I really wanted to embrace that beautiful rhythm that the Waldorf School gives you, and this beautiful structure. And it was just so idyllic and poetic, and it was so beautiful that I put a lot of stress in the early years of keeping it just so, and I did my circle time and I had my candlelight at the snack table and I did, but I felt the stress of managing that it didn't allow for a margin of error and the flow of, you know, the 3 children have this superhero game that they're really loving, and I didn't want to interrupt that.
Yeah, that was actually a big learning curve for me too. It's exactly it. I think in the beginning, once we fall into something that we really enjoyed in terms of pedagogy, it's like we want to follow this rhythm and have this idyllic setting. And ultimately, I think being a really good parent and a really good, you know, teacher, guide, whatever you may be, is following their lead, right? And this is where maybe you can tell us even more. You have kind of gone all in with this term unschooling, which is so unconventional.
I am so off
off the radar.
I am off-roading and it's terrifying.
Okay.
It's terrifying because there's a lot of self-doubt, right? And there's like, if you go and grab somebody in grade 2 and put them beside my child, there's areas that are measurable and the curriculum that's measured that my children don't have the practice and experience with yet because we haven't pushed it on them, right? If you look at math and reading and some of these, you know, identified curriculum that my children don't sit down to an English class every single day for 45 minutes. They don't. So they don't have the experience. And this is what I tell them when they ask why they can't do things. Because the children that they play with that are primarily in the government system, they are like, you can't do this yet or this year or this yet, because those children are measured, graded, and told that they're good because they can do them well. And my children are like, well, am I not good because I can't do them well? I said, well, the only reason you can't do them well is because we don't spend that much time doing it. That I've told them the story about Jane Goodall and how gorillas can be taught many, many, many different words, and they can be developed because it's repetition and practice, repetition and practice, and that's how we learn everything. It's repetition and practice. And right now we haven't done the repetition and practice, which is why you don't know how to do these things like your street friends know how to do, because every day they sit down for 45 minutes and do their English class every day at school. And we don't do that in this house. So that is why you can't do things like they do them. But they also don't know other things that I've noticed.
I was just going to say, your children would surpass by many grade levels in certain areas at the same time.
I love the comments. Because it is terrifying, because I have a lot of doubt of going, am I messing this up horrifically? Because there's no guidance at all to say this is how you do unschooling. So like there's no like, here's your unschooling manual, this will be perfect. Because it is unique, and this is this idea that my children were born to me as I got my children. So your children won't thrive with me because they're not mine, and that exchange,
they choose
that soul contract wasn't given to me from your children to me because I'm not their mom, right? And so I have to trust.
I love that.
This very scary, I have to completely just trust the process.
The universe.
Which is, when people talk about religion and faith, they can't see it. Right? And it's like, this is this blind faith that I have to trust this process, and it's terrifying. So when I get comments of like, wow, your children are so well spoken. Wow, your children are so incredible. Look at how they did that, and their problem solving and their creativity and their independence, and look at their capabilities, and they're like gobsmacked at some of the things my children can do. I'm like, oh, thank God.
You checked off some of the
Thank God. I haven't messed this up horribly. It's like people don't know when they compliment my children on their capabilities, and I'm like, thank you, God. Because it's scary.
But I love that, because there's so few people really that trust themselves that much to then be able to trust their children to that extent in the way that you do. And it is really, you're giving them such a beautiful, radically different than the normal experience. But I think it's gonna, in turn, I'm just very curious to see them as adults, because they are so independent, and they are so good at solving problems, and those are the skills that, you know, people want to have entering university or exiting university and entering the career fields, right? Like Microsoft is probably looking for those.
This is the thing,
the qualities,
And this is when you go into these, and Microsoft is incredible because the thing about them is they attract amazing talent.
Right.
Everybody is on their A game. And this is why my decision I had to choose, when I had Justin, I realized that I can't do both things well.
Right.
Microsoft was 60, 70 hours with A-game people committed to their jobs. And I was like, I can't be the mother I want to be and have the career I want to be. And I'm going to fail at both. Like, I'm going to give 110% of myself. Yeah. And I'm going to fail everywhere. Right? Like, there's no way for me to be the mother I want to be, have the job I want to have, be successful in my career, take care of myself. Like, this isn't happening. Like, I'm going to push myself to 130% and literally fail at everything.
Exactly. It just isn't worth it.
And I can't undo having the child, so...
well, you had them for a reason.
We're going to go all in on the parenting. So in the 10 years, I have Crohn's disease. Yeah. And so that's something I'm trying to understand from a energetic resonance. So like this resonance healing and this is something I've chosen to take on. And so I'm trying to unravel the autoimmune disease thing. But I went to the water school because of the farmer's market because I needed to feed my child proper food so he didn't get sick. And that led to the culinary nutrition background from Megan Telkmer's Academy. And then that led me to some other things, but that led me into breath work. Breath work led me into studying Vendetta, which is one of the Bhagavad Gita's books. And then I realized, isn't that interesting? Because I've always wanted to be into the yoga world. And I've done a lot of yoga, but I've never really embraced the yoga world. Yeah. And I figured out Jana yoga is yoga of knowledge. And I have been on this pursuit of knowledge. I call my homeschool the love of learning and even my anniversary is coming up and we've only been married 11 years. And I always said that I love the why. Like, I love to understand. And I was introduced to Jana yoga. Yeah. And I'm like, my name, this is not a coincidence, this yogic understanding and learning. So I studied the science of spirituality in Vendetta after breath work. That led to lots of things. But
crystal healing, you have that behind you. You have your yoga certification now.
200 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I mean.
I'm collected all of these things, right? Yeah. It's like the jack of all trades. The jack. Yeah.
Yeah, but you were doing it parallel to raising your children, and I think it is this amazing window of opportunity. I think opens up once we become mothers. That it's like there's so much to learn and embrace, and we can do it like parallel to their journey and their learning. And see, now you're kind of coming out of that. I feel like we're in a similar position where it's like both of our oldest are getting to the age of 10, and it just feels like something is shifting a little bit after 10 years, and like you're taking on a big new entrepreneurial,
so I think with that journey, what it led me to, and my mother said something really critical to me when Justin was very young, because I thought, of course I'm going to go back to work. Actually, I was very into the equality, because I said, like, in the 12 months of maternity leave, I'm going to take 6 months and Kevin will take 6 months, and we will share it 50-50, because parenting will be a 50-50 arrangement. And then 6 months turned into 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I couldn't find a daycare. Every time I walked into a daycare, the entire toddler room was screaming. Yeah. The entire toddler. And I don't know why, because I understand they don't do that all the time. And I understand from other mothers that have put their children in daycare that they have wonderful stories to tell, but just when I was looking for them every time I walked into a toddler room, they were all having their meltdowns, and I'm like, I'm not doing this, not a chance in hell. And so I just never found anybody that I was like, here, take this thing that I carried in my body for 9 months, here, take him and you can raise him. Yeah. I never felt, if I had found somebody that made me feel like, oh my gosh, I have total faith in this person to raise my child, I might have. Yeah. I just never found that person, and I felt like I needed to do this myself. Yeah. I needed to, like, you know, when they say, if you want something done in the way you want it done, you need to do it yourself. And I just felt like I needed to do this myself.
Totally.
And that was really important to me to do myself. And so that's where we are. Yeah. Yeah.
But you've had this vision for a couple of years now that I know you, to really kind of take everything you've learned in this alternative medicine world, alternative learnings of sorts, and kind of create something for the community. So you have this vision of wanting to bring forth a retreat-like center, like healing, but meanwhile, you've created this amazing Hugy, the Hugy that's coming forth. I don't know if you have it with you.
I do, and I should have had it.
Let's do it. Here we go. This is the Hugy. Can you imagine? She just like designed it herself, and your children were kind of the ones that led you.
Well, the thing is, it's bamboo and it's super soft.
Exactly.
It's lovely.
It is so cool.
And I remember I was like, sometimes at night I'll go like this and just climb into it, and this is just, it feels good. And it's this deep pressure, and we haven't touched on it, and we can talk about it later, but Jeremy has Down syndrome.
Yes.
And Justin has up syndrome, as he likes to call it. And so this deep pressure is something that helps with this sensory. And I know Jeremy's therapist, both his speech and language therapist, his occupational therapist, and his physical therapist, all have a tool that's like this. It's a little bit tighter, but because of the stretchability, you can make this as tight as you want to.
Okay, so you would put Jeremy like in here, like a cocoon, almost like, right?
Do you know when your babies wake up and they want to be with mommy, but mommy's in the middle of a loud room, and they're not ready to be in a loud room? They literally, this is why they got called a Hugy, because they would crawl inside, and they'd go like this, and the baby would be underneath here, and they would just wake up from nap time slowly and calmly. It was a place of like, I'm with my mom, and I'm in my little cocoon, and I'm safe in my cocoon, and they instantaneously were just comforted. And so that's why they called it the Hugy. I need the Hugy, right?
It's perfect. It's perfect because you said, again, you can do the same thing for the strollers when the kids are in there. Just
so I bought this when I worked at Microsoft.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Okay.
And nobody... and I didn't know what it was, but what I used to do...
Use it as a scarf?
No, I used to wear it to work like this. So this is exactly how I go to... So once upon a time in corporate world, on a Friday, you got to wear jeans.
Oh, right.
You couldn't wear jeans every day. You could only wear jeans on Friday. Every other day, you had to be in a suit. So on Fridays, you got to wear jeans. But it's freezing in offices. So I would go like this, and this is how I would wear it. And then when I got back to my desk, I would be like freezing cold at my desk. But this was like... This is just the shawl.
No, like a shawl.
It's like a shawl. It's, you know, but, you know, you could wear it like a scarf. I did this a lot.
I feel like I would like it in the winter or like fall.
I see a lot of hipster men with this big chunky scarf. Like this is a male look I've seen a lot.
Yeah, you could do for male for sure.
I've been hiking a lot, and I've done this. When I was on my honeymoon, really cool. I had to cover my head a few times when I went to a temple. I also had to make it a skirt a few times in temple, but you'd go to like Asia is very hot, and I'd have shorts on. You can't go into temple with shorts on, so I'd make it a skirt or make it a head wrap.
We're gonna have to show later how to make it a skirt.
But the children use it. The children use it like, you know, the
Sarah, I think
you know the Sarah silks.
Yeah,
they use it like a Sarah silk.
Right.
So
multi-sensory kind of open-ended toy.
It's been mountains. It's been a tent. It's been a dinosaur hideout. It's been a train. Emily and Jeremy will get into it, and they'll pull each other like a train, and they'll fight against each other. Like one will run this way and one will run with this way, and they'll feel the tension of their bodies. It's super cute.
It is really cute.
They play with it all the time.
Yeah. And this will probably be launching in a month or two, and we'll be able to link.
I need to get the photography done, and I'm going to run the first run. So it was a commitment of, I think, 200 units is the first run. So
and they'll be actually being printed from BC, I think you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's, it was very important. I really tried to find anybody I could work with to support females, and anybody I could support in Canada.
Yeah.
So I exhausted those driving force because I felt
those are really important
This
things.
is the thing we talk about all the time, right? Like we really have this idea of sustainability and conscious purchasing. And when I wanted to not return to the workforce, but I wanted to be able to support myself. And when I got to selling something, I thought, well, I don't want to just sell anything. The world has so much. And then I felt good about this because I was like, hold on a second. This is a towel, this is a blanket, this is a change tent, this is a scarf, this is a blanket, this is a sensory tool, this is a nursing cover, this is a stroller cover, this is like so many things
in one.
And it's one thing, so that means my product is hopefully reducing consumption. Because this was hard, right? Because consume my product so you consume less products. But I needed to find something that I felt really good about. So the fact that it's bamboo and the fact that it is multi-use made me feel like I was happy and proud to do this. And what made me think about it is that it became a valuable tool where we were like, almost like, where's the Hugy? I need the Hugy. We went to the cottage and some of the linens got wet. So I'm like, I've got Huggies. And we made those pillowcases and we made those the sleeping bags for the moment. Like the other day I was at the grocery store and I was like, I can't buy any more bags. Can't do it. And I made it like a Santa sack and I took my 17 items and I just made it a Santa sack and I left and I was like, this thing does everything.
You have to get creative, and that's so perfect, I think.
And I think that's the idea, right? You don't you're buying this thing that does a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
But the children love it and they feel like they can really get hugged in it, which is why the children named it the Hugy. So it's the Hugy.
Well, you touched a little bit on Jeremy, and with Jeremy, you've chose to school him no different than with your children, that don't have Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And how do you think that's played into his development?
Yeah.
And what can you recommend maybe people that are going through similar challenges with their own kids right now?
This goes back to the Waldorf idea, right? Because it's this child-led observation. And it's not just looking at my child was born in 2015, so that means they're here and this is what they're doing. You have to take a step back and do that child observation. Where are they now? What is their next step forward? And so Jeremy's no different. Where is he right now and what's his next step forward? And that is a slower step than others, but it is exactly the same step as everybody else.
Right.
And our world is not filled with people with Down syndrome. He has to live in a world that he is the one-off. That is the world he is going to live in, right? And he is going to be the odd man out. And so we do participate in some of the associations. We do participate in some of the events. And I'm like, look, it's important that Jeremy knows he's not the only one. He might move about the world thinking he's the only one, but he needs to know he's not the only one.
But I think you mentioned you notice a difference when you do go to these events and the other children close to his age or older are there. The way that he's communicating and managing, relating is different.
He's noticeably more extroverted, I would say. He's noticeably more independent. And I don't know everybody else's story, so I understand that autism runs quite prominently with Down syndrome. And my perception of what happens there is this, and Jeremy shows this, is our world moves very quickly. Even just this conversation, we're using our words fast. He needs things slower. And when we look at the holistic community, it's about slowing down and being more mindful and thoughtful. And I think I'm fully supportive of this idea because Jeremy the slower we go, the more he's available to thrive. And if we look at community, and the weakest link, or the link with the least amount of muscle built. That if we tailor things to let other people thrive in any environment, we're all better off, right?
Right.
And so Jeremy, he does need things slower, and he needs, and I explain this to people when he goes into programs that he's the only one with Down syndrome. And I say a lot of the times you might have to remind a typical child of the rules and take the extra minute to re-explain to the child that just forgot.
Yeah.
Just take that extra time at the beginning for Jeremy proactively and saying, do you understand? And do you understand? Like, the children were playing a hide and seek game. So we had a friend over. Very quickly they came up with hide and seek. Very quickly they developed the rules, and very quickly they started the game. And I just reminded Emily, does Jeremy understand the rules? Does Jeremy understand the game? Does he understand what's happening? So his sister just took one extra second and saying, Jeremy, this is the game. This is what we're doing. Do you understand? And then he's like, why? Why are we doing this? No, we're just playing the game. And he had questions.
Yeah, he did.
And then as soon as he got it, he was playing like a typical child. He just needs that extra second to get it.
Yeah, right.
Right?
And I think actually that can be said for a lot of children with any sort of imbalances, whatever you want to call them, right? That's all they need. They need that extra attention. And this is the unfortunate part of our schooling system today, is that there's so many children together in such a small space, being sort of like dictated on these are the rules and this is all you can do, with limited support from the teachers themselves. No matter how great of a teacher you are, it is just almost impossible, right, to attend to them. And hence why I think both you and I, first and foremost, for those reasons included, choose to not send our children. I think especially at a younger age, it's easier for the child to just kind of get lost in that mix.
It is a lot having the children 24/7.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult. They want the attention, and they want to be heard and seen and engaged and connected with mommy, of course.
Yeah.
And they don't want to give mommy space for her to be. They want that connection as much as they can get it. So it really becomes inner work. And this is the whole Steiner thing of this inner development. I'm 100% on board, because I feel like, as I said, you asked me at the beginning, what do my days look like? And I set the pace.
Yeah.
And so it's my energy.
Yeah.
It's my habits. It's how I perceive things.
Yeah.
That sets the tone.
And directly impacts them.
Directly. And if I panic and, oh no, and I'm nervous about it, these are learned behaviors.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's very much so. And you touched upon something with homeschooling and the classroom environment. And I always laugh when people say, wow, it's a lot for you to have 3 children at home all the time, and how do you homeschool 3? And I think, how do teachers teach 30 children? I have 3, that's a lot, so how do you do 30, right?
I think there's just a lot more rules and regimentation.
Teachers are in a classroom with 30 children, and how do you pay attention to 30? How do you pick up on their nuances, right?
I don't. Unfortunately, it's hard, I think, until they get a little older and then, the classroom kind of quiets down, so to speak. People
ask me, what am I going to do for high school, and what am I going to do for this? And and I'm
what
like,
are your thoughts?
I'm in a 6 month, so I look 6 months ahead.
Okay.
And I'm just doing the 6 months ahead. And so when I have teenagers and I look 6 months ahead, then I'll make adjustments. And so I'm not saying never to anything, because I don't know, right?
Exactly, right? So there might be a day where they do go to school.
And maybe that's, and maybe not.
Or maybe not.
And I mean, nowadays, the education, I know you can have information in snippets, and that's not well researched, and I want to make sure that, well researched and reading are 2 different things. But you can really educate yourself with the amount of information there is. Like, if you really want to be informed and educate yourself, that information's there.
Yeah.
And when you're figuring out what you want to do in life, a lot of these lessons you can learn when you're ready to learn them.
Totally.
And post-secondary is available at any age, at every age. And university and doctorates and all of these finer professions that require the education from a structured manner, they can be collected anytime. They're pieces, they're tools for your toolbox that you can collect at any time. It's not time specific, and this like urgency on
at 18 you gotta like know what the rest of your life looks like. I completely agree, and this is actually why
this is where we agree on education, this idea of giving space for development.
And even here, what we're creating here with Earthlings, my whole vision of wanting to bring forth this educational library through these master classes that are going to be accessible on the app is so that anybody can go on there, and it's going to cover all sorts of topics. And instead of sitting there on like YouTube, which is, fine here and there, but everything is going to be curated in this one place. And if you're curious about living a more healthful, sort of intentional, conscious life, this will be here for you to access, and you can start your self-learning here. Your children can learn through these same video lessons, and onwards, and it goes, because what if something then piques your interest out of this grouping of classes? So I really love this actually online format that so many people again kind of refuse and say, oh well, it's taken over our world, technology, this and that.
It has.
But there's so much positivity that is bringing forth, and we don't need to look at it as if like, oh well, there's so much. We need to have a balance, I think, in life, as always, right? We need to prioritize nature and natural things in the same way we prioritize technology and progress, and that's when you hit the sweet spot. But the reality that we're all living here, and we're these souls that are living here on this earth now, is for a reason. It's not to completely deny everything that has led us to this point, I think. So I just like the fact that you touched on the point of education and being able to self-learn and self-govern, because I truly do see that is a window of opportunity for so many children all over the world, especially those, again, that are maybe in places, rural places, or somewhere where it's not as accessible, right? Second, third world countries. Imagine if, enough funding is given and they now have internet and a computer, it just changes their whole life.
It does.
So
actually, I think that was one of the projects I was working on right before I left Microsoft, and it was trying to get, looking at some very remote African tribes and how do we get the systems in place to allow for internet connectivity, because it was a little bit of, to build the infrastructure for internet connectivity in a tribal space in Africa is kind of like an interesting topic. But the idea is that if we could get this accomplished and allow for these underdeveloped areas that are struggling with basic human rights of clean water and clean food and nutrition and things like that, if they could have access to some of the thousands of YouTube videos on how to make water turbines and how to regenerate your soil and how to do like basic care, like first aid care and hygienes and things like that. Like these are things that they just don't have experience with, right? And so that idea of access to information is critical. And with education, I know specifically because of the York Region Homeschool Group. I'm one of the administrators. And so I approve new member requests. And the new member requests are consistently like, I have a 4-year-old and I'm curious. I have a 5-year-old and I'm curious. I just pulled out my 6 and 7-year-old. What do I do? And this panic, that some mention of like, I have to recreate the government system in my home. I have to get them, I have to recreate their school system in my house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know how to do that, guys. I don't know the first clue of how I would recreate the government school system in my house. That is not what homeschooling for me is about. And when people ask about homeschooling, and I say, that's like saying, how's your life going? Like, you get to choose. You get to choose, and there's this freedom.
Yeah.
And this idea of when people are thinking about homeschooling, there's this daunting look in their eye, like, how am I going to possibly homeschool?
Yeah, and I don't know it all.
There's this expectation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I have to be able to do this and this and this. And I've learned that I learn as I go. And I'm learning with them.
Exactly.
And I don't know what a year from now is going to look like. And the resources that we're afforded allow me to pivot and meet their needs. And I'm going to fail, and I'm going to look back and say that was a fail, and I could have done this better, and I could have done this better, and I could have done this better. And the reality is that will never not exist.
Well, you have this acceptance of your failures. That in itself is a huge thing, I think, for so many people, because people are afraid to fail.
But you'll never not fail.
Exactly.
You'll never not fail. Exactly. You could give everything perfectly and something will fail.
Yeah.
Right?
We're not meant to be perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing is meant to just work out.
In 20 years of event planning, we would get plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and we would have all of the contingencies for everything, so we could have the perfect event, and always something would go wrong. You will always, always, always fail. There will always be mistakes, and they're not supposed to be, nothing's supposed to be flawless. And I will mess up their childhood in the way that it was supposed to be messed up. And I have to just trust that. And I'm doing my best. And this idea that at the end of the day, I look at myself in the mirror saying, did I do everything I could? And some days I could have done better because I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And other days I did everything amazingly and I'm really proud. And there's ebbs and flows.
Well, you said messed up their childhood, but I think what you mean by that...
Mess it up perfectly. I'm perfectly imperfect, right?
Ultimately, it's going to be like 10% of failures and like 90% of greatness.
And I know that I messed it up in the way I was supposed to mess it up, and I have to accept that. And the judgment of the failing, I feel like that's where we went wrong. Because the failing's supposed to happen.
Yeah. And that takes us into this bigger picture of the macro picture of just in itself, everything is happening to you as it should be. Right? It's this universal like reality.
Yeah.
Universal law, whether you believe in religion or you view things, agnostically, however, but there is this like continuous interaction with all living things, and we're all interconnected, and things are always happening as they should be happening to each one of us.
Yeah.
We have moments where we get to choose, do we go this way or that way?
Yeah. And this is this empowerment, right? Because this idea that I can't decide and I can't do this and I can't do that, that really gives away this idea of empowerment, because you always get to choose.
Yeah.
And even if that's changing your perspective about how you're looking at something, you always get a choice of how you choose to react, respond. There's always a choice there, and the non-choice is also a choice, right?
Exactly.
It's all, and that is the life's journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. These kind of seeing yourself living the journey.
Yes.
Outside your physical state.
Yeah.
Like we talked about this a little bit, right? The observation of, wow, things are actually happening to me and I have every ability and capability to embrace them how I do. Even the negative things, I welcome them into my life and I sort of see them, experience them, transmute them, whatever is needed in the moment. And then it takes me into the next phase. And if I don't, this is what can happen, right? With those moments, it can build inside of you, you can repress it or whatever. And then it will show itself through illness, through, I don't know, other others experiences that could be like just pulled in, whether you call it karmic or however, or you keep cycling in the same kind of hamster wheel of like the same things keep happening to me. And
that's the lesson you haven't wanted to learn yet.
Exactly.
It will keep coming up over and over and over and over and over. And that's the thing. Anything that keeps coming up is just the lesson you're not ready to learn just yet.
Yeah. And each have a choice. I think this is the big thing. It's like, don't push them aside. Don't repress them. Take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Go for it. Homeschool your children, start a new business venture, whatever it may be. Like, find what really is truthful to you, right? And pursue that.
I'm having a lot of fun finding what I'm trying to avoid. So anything that I feel like I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that, I'm noticing that. I'm like, there's the story of the cow and the bull. Have you heard the story of the cow?
I think so. Yeah.
So there's the storm, the big massive storm that's coming.
Yeah.
And so when the cow sees the storm coming, it turns around and runs away from the storm and ends up being in the storm forever. But the buffalo, it's not the bull, it's buffalo.
The buffalo.
The buffalo sees the storm coming, heads down, and just goes straight through it, and only spends the shortest amount of time possible. Right. And so this idea of anything I do this to, oh God, I don't want to do that. I am forcing myself, mindfully choosing to say, this is where I'm going to run into. And I feel like that's exciting because this resistance, that built up pressure, like almost like you could feel the energetic pressure of trying to avoid something, right? Yeah. And that stole energy. Right? And it created fear. It created avoidance, it created fear, it created judgment, as opposed to this embracing. And with chronic pain, neurologically chronic pain changes how you look at things. And this is a trick that I learned, that when you have physical pain, not even just perceived pain or resistance to something, a new activity or hobby you want to try or not try, but leaning into the pain, especially with childbirth, like leaning into the pain and embracing the discomfort changes the experience with it.
Completely.
It changes the experience where it's almost like
you're no longer feeling the pain in that same way
I want to say you enjoy it, but that seems really sadistic, and it's not enjoyment.
Well, some people do. They call it orgasmic birth, for example, when they enter this plane and they can just...
So my last, and I told you I did one other interview, it was like, somebody told me that you sing the song in your school sometimes, that fire my spirit. Yeah. Right? Earth my body, water, okay. And so fire my spirit. And so they call the crowning the ring of fire. And then one of my holistic, somebody I trust on this birthing process, said that crowning, that ring of fire, is the soul incarnating. So when I gave birth to Emily, I was really thinking, I'm like, this is her soul's fire. And I was like enjoying this fierce, I didn't know if it was a girl or a boy, but she turned out to be this like fierce little feminine power. And I'm like, this fire that came through me was just so beautiful, right? Because there needs to be more women that understand their unique position in the world.
It's very true. It's very true. And when I sat down with my husband Tom, actually in our last interview, we talked about, right, how male and female powers just look so different. And we can't just take this copy and paste of what a male dominated sort of reality was and now just plunk ourselves into that. No, our power looks so different, and I love seeing more and more women like embracing it. So I completely agree.
Well, I think this is this balance, right? Because we had this male-dominated world, and then we'll have this female-dominated world that will probably be followed by a male-dominated world, maybe.
Or, I don't know.
Or this collaborative
there could be a collaborative
acceptance. Maybe this would be this beautiful harmonic balance that comes afterwards.
That's really what I feel. I feel that it's
Right?
that way. I think
Right?
so. I think everything is rebalancing, and
this is with earthlings,
therefore,
right?
yeah.
This like-minded idea.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be. I intentionally did not want it to be a female-led thing.
No.
Because I have 3 boys, right? Like, and you have 2 boys. These are our sons, and again, we value, I think, our partners and husbands, and it's like the balance. We exist here as these 2 genders on this planet, and we bring forth something so different, and there's no other way but the 2 to be embraced equally.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. One exists for the other to have space, and the other exists for the other to have space on 2 completely different planes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some of the things that you've talked about on the male and female, and I couldn't agree more, because they play uniquely opposing, complementary, balancing positions.
Yeah.
One's not better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
One's not stronger or weaker, but they're different.
Totally different.
Completely different, and they both serve a very significant purpose.
And I think the reason why we don't have them viewed as equal yet is because, again, as separate genders, we're still at play with this, like, no, what I can do is better, or he's not doing things this way, and I know how to do it best, so he needs to listen to me, and vice versa.
But that was the age of the ego.
It's still out there, unfortunately. We like to think so. Exactly. I keep telling people the same thing, but I think we have our community.
It's not going to go down quietly. It's going to go down with a good, proper fight.
It is. We're in this like next big, eclipse. So
as I'm trying to evolve myself, I still like it when my ego gets complimented. It feels good. The ego likes it.
I mean, it's part of our nature. I don't think we should really die the ego. Like, it should not die.
It just can't be in charge driving the ship.
Exactly. It needs to be in check.
Yes.
And I think there's moments where it's okay. You look in the mirror, you're like, oh, I look good. Or whatever. Like,
it's a piece, and it deserves its space as well. It just can't be the leading dominant force, because it wants to be.
Yeah.
That's like, there's a reason we don't let the children run the world, because they're not developmentally there. The ego is not developmentally prepared to run the world. It kind of ran amok.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And I love, again, you touched upon this, this theme of like enlightenment, and that's where we're headed. And the only thing, I just don't like how, again, sometimes in New Age communities, enlightenment is presented as if we're just like headed to the light. And I don't think that's what we're doing. Because if you're just going to the light, you're repressing these aspects of yourself that were dark, and you didn't deal with them. And I think in order to get a balanced enlightenment is to face those dark areas.
I had a moment where I was sunbathing, like, when you just turn to the light and you're just looking straight at the sun. The natural thing is to close your eyes.
Right.
Right? And you just soak in the sun.
Yeah.
And I had this moment, I was like, you have to close your eyes. You can't be completely immersed in light. You need the dark. It's not possible, because you can't survive in pure light. You need that shade. You need that balancing effect. And for that, you have to be grateful for all of that discomfort, all of those. I did a breathwork session, and I came out of it saying, I have no more bad feelings. I have light feelings and heavy feelings, high vibrational feelings and low vibrational feelings. Yeah. And they need each other.
Exactly. They need each other.
They need each other. So when I'm having my horrible days and I'm like, this is the most like, take me now, just get me out of here, this is horrible. I try to catch myself and say, for this I give gratitude. Yeah. Because this serves a purpose, and it makes my wonderful days be wonderful days. What are you gonna do? Yeah. Like, it's life.
I couldn't agree more.
Life, right?
Exactly.
And judging it only makes it twice as worse.
It
Accepting it and giving gratitude for it actually makes it so much more manageable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more you do that for yourself, the next time somebody says something your way that isn't so pleasant or whatever is a disagreement, you're not as affected by it, because you're like, I know what I am and who I am. I tell myself that like right on the daily through my just experience. Yeah. And you're like, wow. Like I had that recently and I was like, I'm not like whatsoever bothered.
Isn't that weird? When you went, like, I feel like I've gotten to the place where when people say anything, I understand it's the lens they're looking through. It's what they're seeing. It's what they're experiencing. It's what they need to express. It's how they're moving right now. Yeah. It really has nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. And so I have empathy and compassion, and I'm able to just hear it and give space. And even if it's a criticism, I'm able to like hear it without any emotional attachment. Yeah. Like it's not happening to me.
Exactly.
Even if it's a criticism, I'm like, that's interesting. Wow.
It is interesting to know.
Tell me more.
Exactly.
Like, really?
Yeah, it's a conversation.
Because it's insightful.
It is.
It's insightful to the human experience.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I think
it's like, wow, this is where you are right
now. Once you get
to
this place,
it's interesting.
And this is why
I liked people watching when I was a kid. I loved people watching. In my 20s, people watching was my thing. I would go to restaurants by myself without a cell phone because they didn't exist. Yeah. And I'd people watch. It was the thing.
I agree.
And honestly, people watching.
The reality is that it is like, it's the experience of life. Yeah. That is the ultimate sort of fulfilling thing that we have. Yeah. Because if you think about it, we as souls, right? We incarnate here to experience human, earthling life because it looks different than maybe anywhere else out there. Yeah. Like in this physical body, you're mentioning physical pain, and it's true. We don't get, we should be grateful for the experiences of physicality.
Well, this is what my soul wanted. My soul wanted to come down and experience the whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, I can relate only now
I'm really grateful for the homeschooling though. Yeah. Because in the corporate world, plugged in like that, it's like you can't see the forest in the trees. Yeah. You need to step outside the painting and see the whole forest on the forestscape to get a perspective. And without that homeschooling, and this is why motherhood changed, right? Because I was like, I'm going to fail everywhere. I'm going to have to, and the toddler room's constantly screaming, I can't do everything. I'm going to stay home with my child. And my mother said, you just make different life choices to make homeschooling work. And I have made different life choices to make stay-at-home motherhood work. Yeah. And I just assumed you had to go to work to live in our society. You had to have a job. You had to have 2 incomes. You had to do these things. And she said, well, that's just silly. You make different choices. And in consumption, things can get out of control, and it is hard to say no to a lot of things, but you can make different choices and stay at home. Yeah. And in staying home, I got to be able to separate and get that external look and being able to do that observation and have the childhood observation and have that internal observation. And so motherhood changed the whole thing.
I love that.
It changed the whole thing.
I love, and you had, again, you had some support system, like your mother completely kind of supported you in that.
She was a very pro stay-at-home mom.
I love that.
She's very anti-homeschooling, but she was very pro-school. Like a stay-at-home mom. The children should be in school.
Should be in school. You should be relaxing.
Everybody in my family thinks all of my decisions are wrong. My nutrition, my medical, family doctor, I know a lot of people in holistic circles don't even have family doctors. Yeah. And I have a little bit of fear that I just want to cover my bases, so I do an annual check-in. They measure them, they weigh them, they say, can we have a vaccination conversation? I say, not again today. Still no, but thank you for bringing it up again. And all of the fear, and the lot of fear, aren't you worried about this, and aren't you worried about this? And I'm like, I'm really not worried about any of that stuff, but I'm good. But
I think it's just so refreshing to see, again,
the whole family's against me, but I'm like this.
But it's refreshing to see you embracing it so joyfully, just enjoying the experience of being home with your kids 24/7. And I think it's gonna, I hope, speak to a lot of people and resonate as like a supportive node that anybody out there can do it and should do it if it is something that's calling them, you know?
It's an incredible gift.
It is. It is. You can't.
It is the hardest job on the whole planet, and it's the best job on. It's got the light and the dark. It finds every crack and every weakness, and you have to develop yourself, which I'm eternally grateful for finding all my cracks and finding all my weaknesses and unearthing all of the things I needed to unearth and look at, because I'm stronger and better and have much more insight into myself. And
totally.
I'm a better version of myself, and I never would have been tested. And it's the best job on earth. So
truly,
right?
Thank you for being here, and sharing it so openly. And we can't wait to sit down and do. Jana will be, as you know, on one of our master classes sometime soon.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.